All right, so hello again. Today we will be following up on Wolfgang's last month's talk. He presented then, as you remember, the basic operations with jinks, and today we wanted to continue with a bit practical perspective. So as we know by now, you can click things around with jinks, but at some point you need something more than the graphic interface allows you to do, and the temptation is to do what we know, namely to add some code somewhere. But I think that the idea we wanted to put forward is like, let's ask ourselves before we add code, can this be done in config JSON? Because the config opens up quite a few possibilities for changing the configuration for profiles, for features. So each profile, so every feature in Jinx will come with some configuration possibilities. They are all defaulting to something, but if you don't like it, you can change it. So there's quite far you can go with editing only the config JSON. And of course, it's quite, because the possibilities are quite wide, it's difficult to know what can be done and what cannot be done in config JSON. So there's the JSON schema and in Jinx JSON file, and that's not the nicest read, obviously, but this is the kind of source of truth. So there you will see for every property in this JSON file, you will see what kind of options you have there. The other way is in Jinx, you have the configuration JSON you are editing, but underneath there is the merge configuration. So on top is like what you are actively configuring, changing, and the merge configuration shows you the effect of merging it with the default. So that's another way to look around and to check what are the options and what can be potentially changed. So first really question, can it be done in config? And then if you find out that the answer is no, but you think is the wrong answer, then we would like to know. For example, yeah, I can change. I don't know. I can change the background color for the toolbar, but why cannot? Or I can set the logo for the menu bar, but then it also goes in the very bottom on the landing page. But I would like the one in the bottom to be different, and there's no configuration setting, but I think there should be. So you can already implement it or open an issue, or even better, implement it and send us a PR. But if you're not 100% sure what would make sense, but you have a good feeling that something could be done, let's start a discussion, and then we come to some sort of consensus that fits a larger group of people. So that's the config part. At some point, you will have to change some code, very likely. Yeah. And then the main idea is like really go with the flow, don't fight the generator. In particular, don't try changing files that are meant to be regenerated every time you change something in the config. So instead of changing this generated files, add your own files. There may be programmatic modules in xQuery, and this can be JavaScript pieces, CSS. You can add them in separate files and then register them in appropriate places. So sometimes this will be in config.json to register them globally. Sometimes it will be with more granularity for say like you only need a certain CSS for a specific page, then you can register it in a front matter for that page template. This is not anything new really, yeah, because this is what we are saying in a way over and over again from early publisher. Stick to the conventions, it will make your lives easier. So if you are already starting with the jinks generated app, you will see that there is a certain organization, that query modules go into module sub-collection, that page templates are in templates and under. Yeah, that CSS you will find in principle in resources CSS, except for the odd related CSS that are in resources odd, and so on and so on. So this is the same as before, but it's worth repeating. So you created your own CSS, and how to register. Yeah, in config, you can use the styles property, and here we have an example that registers a single Shakespeare theme CSS. So it will be included if you put it into config.json. It will be included into each and every page. If you would put it into front matter on an individual page template, that would be limited to that page. And here we have
Okay. Here.
yeah, and here we have a config for an app that we were just working on last week, so it's kind of fresh, and we can see that the entire length of the config is can we go down? Yeah, so it's like 120 lines of JSON, obviously, and it starts. Some things are obvious. The namespace for the application, the human readable name, and so this is what you will see in each and every config JSON, and then we have things we customized in particular. For example, the defaults. The default section, very important. Almost every project will change it, if only to specify what is the data collection. Here we are specifying the data collection that is in a separate package, and we are specifying the default ODD. And we are also saying that we are providing two languages and two languages only. So it is a bit geographically separated, but these two lines go together. Yeah, so we are replacing the languages property, which in Publisher in principle you can have about 20 languages, but this page we are only serving in two.
Yes, the replace is needed because otherwise the languages would just be appended to the existing inherited languages.
Yeah, so merged basically. Yeah. So this is the default section. Then we are using slightly newer web components than the released version of Jinx. So we are explicitly stating that we want this one. Next section, collection config, it allows us also for more granular approach. So for everything coming from articles collection, we are applying a special page template, and we are specifying the single view. This is relatively simple. Here is a nice piece. This is where we are registering custom API endpoints.
Yeah, but we will talk about this.
We'll talk about it in more extensively a bit later. But this is what we mentioned. If you have your own custom code, you put it a bit to the side and register it with the config. This is standard, which features profiles we are using here. The long section is about the menu bar. Yeah, we want to have the language choice, but we don't want to be able to delete documents or have the dark mode. And this is specifying which are the menu options available. So boring. Here we have configurations for the register profile. Specifically, this says that you can switch on and off the descriptions for registers. Can we quickly show it? Because that's maybe a bit cryptic.
Wait. No.
Here in places. Yeah, and basically this is the little toggle. Yeah, so this configuration property controls if you want it always on, always off, or or dynamically available. And then the I think almost the last section, or maybe the last section, is the theme. So everything we see here has to do with theming. So the font specification, the color for the toolbar, the default color palette, so we are saying, like, in principle, we are going with the standard color palette, but we are overriding the body background color to white because with the palette it comes in this beige, and we are overriding the toolbar color to the accent color, which is yellow, and fonts and logos. So all the things we mentioned. So you can go pretty far with the config. In Dantiscus, we did not need to register custom JavaScript, but of course you can do it, and the principle is the same like with CSS. You have the script custom property, and you can put in one or more, because it's an array. You can put as many custom JavaScript files as you like. And open API endpoints. We saw it in the real config. It has this. You can register as many kind of endpoint packages for dedicated purposes. Here we have an imaginary example of Shakespeare API, but we can show you. So this is the particular commit that extended the Dantiscus itinerary application with its specific endpoints. And as you can see on the left-hand side, it's literally 3 files. One is, as usual, the config JSON. This is what we do in config JSON. We are registering the endpoint. So we give it a prefix, we give it a namespace, the path to the xquery modules with the functions that implement the endpoints, and the OpenAPI specification in JSON format. So this is the registering, and these 2 other files in itinerary API. It has this TPL extension because it is templated. So we want some elements expanded at generation time. If you did not need it, you could get away without that templating. So because of the TPL, you see this templating expressions that you also see elsewhere in jinks page templates, for example. But other than that, it follows up the OpenAPI specification format. So you are registering paths, specify parameters and response types and so on. And because for each endpoint it points to a function, so you need to have a module that implements this function. So somewhere in the SQL module we will have this iView itinerary function implemented, and this is where it is. So as we covered CSS, API, JavaScript, and then about HTML templates, and maybe I'll pass on to Wolfgang because my voice is giving.
Yeah, so there are various HTML templates in every app, but for the actual document view, which is the one you most likely want to customize, that's defined in config JSON in the property defaults template. And it's very likely that you want to change this. I mean, the TEI Publisher documentation and demo app ships with a number of examples of customized page templates. And yeah, it's likely that you also want a customized one. And the way to do it is by not overwriting what is already there, but actually creating a new one. And it's best to start with the simplest example we have, which is actually in templates pages basic HTML. So I would always start by just copying this into my own template. So say if I'm working on this Dantiscus app, I would probably copy it into something like templates pages, Dantiscus view.
We have the article.
Yeah,
we
okay.
have the article.
Okay.
Customization.
But anyway, I would start with this simplest one. And if we just look at that, that's, oh no, that's the static version. Sorry. So that's really just extending the content HTML and adds one single PB view. So it's very simple, but this is a good point to start with. You want to start with something simple. Important is that you respect the template inheritance hierarchy. So you can see that this extends content HTML, and content HTML will extend base HTML. So in general, if you can avoid it, you don't want to overwrite base HTML or content HTML, but you want to plug into this hierarchy. And if you need to replace parts of those files, you do have this HTML blocks system, which is quite powerful, and we talk about it in a minute. So in general, it's best to always start from a simple template and then develop it further. If you look at some of the templates which are included with TEI Publisher demo, yeah, you will, for example, find the facsimile HTML, and you'll see that it actually just, oh, it's static again. No, why is it always? So you can see that this is actually not adding any HTML. It's really just front matter. So just configuration items which are being added. So particularly in this case so this is for the Shakespeare example, we changed the width of the right-hand sidebar, which shows the facsimile, so it covers 1/3 of the screen width. We configured the IIIF viewer to use PBTiffy with a manifest. We disabled the table of contents. So you can have very simple templates, page templates, which actually only consist of configuration. Yeah, also important is to stick to the default page layout areas when you arrange content on the page. So, I mean, this is all documented, but within TEI Publisher, didn't we have a graphic for this somewhere? No, must be somewhere else. But it's always, we have a before region, we have a content region, we have an after region. We have a header on top. So those are the main regions. And for maximum portability and sustainability, it's best to somehow respect this logic. Yeah, so that's HTML templates. I already said that instead of putting things into config.json, which would apply globally, each template can also have its own configuration in its front matter, and this will then actually override or add to the default configuration. Yeah, so if I need a certain CSS only for that particular page, but not for other pages of my application, then I can just register the styles in the front matter of this template. And the same goes for pieces of JavaScript and other things you may need. So you can always configure most of the settings which can go into config.json also in front matter. Another very powerful block is that you can have custom HTML blocks which are then applied globally. So typical examples in TEI Publisher demo at the moment is we have the IIIF profile. It adds a IIIF viewer. And it adds it to every content page into this after area. Yeah, so if we look at it, the IIIF blocks, if we look at, oh no, it's too big. So it looks a bit complex now because it's all this script templating logic in there. But basically, this is just, so a blocks file is just a template with nothing but templates. Yeah, so here we have the template after, and this will inject content into the after block. The after block is always this right sidebar. And you can see that it checks various things. So it checks if we are actually in a document view, because in the browse page, we don't want the IIIF viewer at all. It checks which kind of viewer, and then either adds PBTiffy or PB facsimile. Or another example would be for registers. So there we also add to the after block, so the right-hand sidebar. But in this case, we are using a PB view, so which renders HTML via the ODD. We have a PB view, and below that we have a map, which we add to this sidebar. So blocks and templates are a very powerful way to actually inject content into existing pages. And this will then work for any kind of page. Yeah? So if that's why we need all those checks here. Yeah, so here it checks if the feature is even enabled, because if we would not check, then basically every page would end up having like suddenly a map. Yeah, so you certainly don't want that, but it can be very powerful if you really need to add something to every single page of your application, then that's the way to go. So now sometimes it still might be necessary to actually overwrite a file which is coming from jinks TEI Publisher profiles. So one example could be the landing page profile where there's an index HTML.
Can show it maybe for dentist schools, because just obviously we did it there. You have seen it only briefly. But the page templates you will find in templates sub collection, and the landing page is usually going under index HTML. And if you generate it from Jinx, you will see something a lot like current TEI Publisher landing page, but you will notice that Dantiscus is looking quite different. So it has the hero, it has the menu bar, it has the hero section, it has the about section, but then it has this timeline that is not standard, and then the highlight section is also looking differently. So you will see some things are similar, some things are quite different. So to achieve this, we have customized the index HTML. One thing is to register custom styles specifically for the landing. Therefore, we do it in the front matter of the index HTML and not globally in config.json. So this gives us the control over fonts and colors and some specific settings, and then some sections will be quite similar, but not exactly the same. So hero section here has been slightly modified to be able to achieve the aesthetics that was requested. And then, for example, the section for the timeline needed to be added. So you see the mix of what comes from Jinx standard with the extensions. And this means that every time you regenerate, you see the conflict. But conflict is not always a bad thing as long as you are aware why do you have that and can judge for yourself if the changes from Jinx and what you have, do you need to merge it? Do you need to pick one version over the other? In this case, because we already did the thinking and the deciding, we could add it to be permanently ignored, not to bother us about this conflict with every regeneration. Yeah, and we are at half time. So we discussed sort of best practice for where and how to configure, where to put your code, but another part is how do you actually go about these changes. Yeah, so typically I would say with Wolfgang, Elena, Jörn, and Lars and other colleagues, each of us does it maybe slightly differently, but we tend to converge on a workflow that works quite well for developing as we do. We have a number of applications under control. So we want to follow similar practices that we can cooperate and collaborate. So first step is always create it with Jinx, then synchronize to your local to a directory on your local file system, so you can commit it to version control. Yeah. So for us, what we have in version control is the ground.
Yeah, but this is mainly also because we are working in teams. Yeah, so we absolutely always want to have everything also synchronized to a Git repository so other people can pick it up. I mean, if you're just working on your own on one single project, you can for a longer time have everything in the database. Yet at some point, at least on a daily basis, I would say, you should sync that also to a directory just for your own safety to have a copy from which you can restore whatever you had on that day.
Yeah, so in principle, I would say if you want to live on the edge, you can postpone. But normally, everything I do, the moment I have a small functional feature completed, I would already commit and push it to version control. So as we said, the first step is generate, synchronize, commit, and then when to regenerate. So basically, every time you change anything in config JSON. So the first step.
Yeah, the point here is that obviously if then I have the application on my file system, I can also start making changes on the file system. So that's what I would do. I change things in an editor like Visual Studio Code or Cursor or anything else, Oxygen. Yeah, I change things there, and then I push them to the exist.db to test them. But it's okay, I only need to update the application. However, there are certain cases when I actually have to rerun jinks in order to see the effective changes I made. And this is whenever I change config JSON, and in some other very special cases, namely when you change CSS, which is related to web components or used inside web components, then you also need to regenerate because there's an extra build step involved. And when you change the color palette itself, then this also triggers some build steps which otherwise you would miss. So, but only in those cases I actually need to go to jinks, regenerate the app, and synchronize back to the file system. In all other cases, I can work on the app normally as with TEI Publisher 9 or 8 before. Yeah, I don't need to go through this jinx step every single time.
Yeah, so this was when to regenerate, and now the regenerate step operates on the database and on the database only. So the moment you trigger regenerate with jinx, you have something else in your database than you have on your file system. Yeah, and this is the moment when you should sync back. So from the database into the file system, so you can then commit it to source control. So this particular things where you don't really need to think about it at all, do I need to sync or not, is each time you regenerated the app with jinx, and there have been some updates. Yeah, so basically this means you have something to sync back. And then also, if you are using the ODD editor, which is operating again on the database and on the database only, so you are changing the ODD in the database, so you are making changes, you need to bring them back to your file system. So the the particular things to keep in mind are the ODD changes, config changes, and regeneration. And in general, whatever you do in the database, you did not do locally.
Okay, so how can you actually sync? Well, there are three possibilities. You can run an automatic sync by using the sync action within jinx, so which is usually shown here in the actions bar. And click in on it, it will ask you for a directory to synchronize to. However, this directory, it will always be local to the server machine, which means that if you are working on a remote server, this won't work for you because you're synchronizing then to a directory on that machine, not on your local desktop or laptop. The same applies if you work with Docker containers, because then the directory will always be inside that Docker container. So for those cases, this option also works, yeah, but you need extra steps later, obviously, then to synchronize what you had, to push what you had into a Git repo. So with a container, that's obviously easy because then I'm usually inside my development environment and I can just commit from there. But there are cases where it gets more difficult and you need to actually copy. Other option is you can obviously always download the XAR and unpack selectively, or you can just use the files tab in Jinx if you know that you only modified very specific things. So that also works in here. Yeah, I can just right click and it gives me this download to folder. And then that's inside the browser. So it's a browser download, so it will have access to your local machine. Then the other way around, yeah, so I'm working locally and I want to sync whatever I do into ExistDB. So the tool I'm using, and I guess you as well, is like the ExistDB plugin for Visual Studio Code. This also works for other editors which are based on Visual Studio, so like Cursor or Google Anti-Gravity and a bunch of others. So there it's simply say I want to synchronize this. I have this synchronize option. I click here and it says start synchronization. And this is then how it normally looks like. And now if I just press save, you will see that it says here uploading. So this automatically uploads every change I make from my development environment to the database and therefore keeps the database up to date. Except for those cases where I need to work in the database, for example, because I'm regenerating via jinks. Then I don't have those changes locally and I need to sync them back as we just said before. There are also other options. Yeah, some people prefer to always rebuild the XAR with Ant and redeploy it. And for redeploying, there's a nice command line tool called XST for ExistDB. So this will also be linked from the slide, so you can find it there. That's also a quick option to work with it if you prefer to live in a terminal, say. There are some golden rules. Sorry, I'm making a bit faster, but because I think we should be finished in 10 minutes. And there are some golden rules, like always commit jinx.json, because that actually contains the hashes which jinx need to determine if something has been changed since it was uploaded last time. Context JSON is also auto-generated by Jinx and should not be modified. So context JSON is basically the merged config which is loaded into some bits and pieces of an app and should not be modified manually because it will always be overwritten next time. Binary files sometimes can be a bit tricky, in particular fonts, yeah, or mostly fonts, because then quite often if you try to synchronize a font to the database, afterwards the browser complains about some byte mismatch somewhere, and this is quite consistent, happens all the time, but fortunately only with fonts, and I don't really know what it is. So last topic before we go into question, how can I actually upgrade an old app, so one which was developed with version 8 or 9 or 7 of TEI Publisher? How can I actually upgrade that to version 10? The bad news first, there is no direct update path, so it's not possible to give you a set of fixed instructions to follow. They will always differ slightly from project to project. So basically, the only way to do it is to recreate the application based on version 10. The good news is that this is less effort than it sounds, because most of the steps, once you get used to it, they're actually quite straightforward, and I think you will enjoy that. The structure in TEI Publisher 10 with Jinx is much clearer than it was before. So the steps I would follow are always, I create a new app, so a completely new app in Jinx. I need to use a different abbreviation and unique identifier. So usually if my previous app was called Dentiscus, I would call the new app Dentiscus 10, for example. Yeah? It's just important that we have different abbreviation and unique identifiers, so we can have both versions in parallel and then start copying. So then I would add profiles as needed. So if I know there will be a register, then I add the register profile. But it's important to not add too many profiles at first. You can always add more later, but the whole structure will just be easier to understand the less profiles you add right away. So, and then basically I would just download the resulting SAR package, which is just a zip file, and unpack it into a new folder next to the old folder where I have the previous version. So, and then step one, I would just copy the TEI XML data, yeah, from the source into the targets data collection. So I would actually do that all on the file system, not inside exist, and only upload to exist once I'm done. Then sometimes you may have differences in your collection xconf, so you need to check those for changes, though this will be rare. Then I would work on the ODDs, so I would copy any custom ODD, but excluding the base ODDs like TEI Publisher.odd, TEI SimplePrint.odd, that's not used anymore, but was in TEI Publisher 9 still there. docx.odd, those are all standard ODDs which we don't want to copy because we want the newest version of them. But then say my Shakespeare ODD, if I'm working on a Shakespeare app, that's the one I want to copy. And then I have to make sure that all my custom odds are properly registered in config.json as we had it before. So I would declare, okay, odds, I have this Shakespeare odd, and I might have more here. And my default odd for display is Shakespeare odd. After I did that and uploaded the app, which I forgot to write here, but at the very end, this means that I would need to maybe run the fix ODDs action to regenerate the ODD configuration properly. So if you are missing ODDs or a display looks wrong, it's always worth just trying fix ODDs because maybe you have some in the registration wrong. Then there were some changes between the base ODD, which is TEI Publisher.odd in version 9 and before, and the one in 10. So the one in 10 has been reworked and covers many more default standard TI cases. But it also introduces more consistent conventions for certain things. So one thing I always stumbled across with most of the apps I was updating so far is that in the old TEI Publisher ODD, some things were not declared yet, which are now declared. So in particular, for example, this applies to person name, place name, term. Yeah, those elements in the old TEI Publisher.odd were not handled. Now they are handled by TEI Publisher.odd. But this means that if you previously were overwriting, say, person name in your ODD, you very likely had the mode attribute on the elements spec set to add, which would now be wrong because the person name is already declared in the TEI Publisher.odd. So just change this from add to change. It's straightforward. Just search for mode equals add and think, does this appear in TEI Publisher.odd or not? And if yes, it appears there, then it should be changed. Similarly, some parameter names have changed. So what previously was parameters header short, that provides this short display for each document in the browse page. This is now parameters display browse. So if you were using header short in your predicate attributes on a model, then just replace it. So there I really just do search and replace because it's applies globally. So, and then the more time-intensive job might be that the templating system, the HTML templating system has changed. So you cannot just copy your old HTML templates, which you might have customized, into a new TEI Publisher 10. That won't work because the old templates, they were still using a lot of Google Material Design components, which have been dropped for compatibility reasons. And they were much more complex in that they basically contained an entire HTML page in each template. Now templates got much simpler because they use this inheritance hierarchy. So I would not directly copy the templates, but what I would do is just, as we already said, start from the basic HTML template for document views, and then see what were the features in your old template which would actually be missing if you were just using basic. And then you will see, okay, I need another PV view here, or I need a timeline element there, or things like that. Yes.
Yeah, and this may turn to be completely unnecessary because a lot of things for which you would have custom templates, now it's just a question of switching on a feature and then enabling it in the config. So for things like IIIF, yeah, so for things like a map, yeah, so basically this now you can just click that you want this feature, and then the only thing to do would be to enable it in the config or in the front matter for a correct page.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would recommend to read up on HTML templates. So the links will also be in the presentation, but it's all in the documentation. So you can read up on template inheritance and on the templating system altogether. I think that's quite well documented. And with this, we are at the end of the presentation, and we have like 10 minutes for questions. Yes, so I'm just going through the questions in chat. So the first one was from Peter Boot. Are the jinks templates specific to jinks and or XSDB, or could it also be used in other applications like the web components? So it is an XSDB package. So it does require XSDB. But it would work outside Jinx TEI Publisher. So you could use it for any other application. It's basically a replacement for the template HTML templating library, which was previously included with XSDB. Jinx templates is different in that it must not only apply to HTML, but also works for other things like CSS files, configs, JavaScript.
Yeah, then we had a question from Joe. Do you put the config into the apps repository, or do we have a fork of Jinx? Yeah, so basically the config JSON belongs to the application, therefore it is part of its repository. I'm sorry, we have noise from someone. Next, yeah, and Peter Boot again had a question: why would the source data have to be copied to a new locations? Yeah, so I was rolling my eyes a bit on when Wolfgang said it, because it is really common, I think more common practice that you have your data package separate, and then you don't need to do anything except in the default property specify the location. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that was already answered. And then we had a question from Boris and then Simon, I think. Boris, can you?
Yes, thank you for this introduction. It was very important for me, and I just want to know how the scenario will looks like when a new version of Jinx will available. If there are some special things to remember, or it would be easy.
Yeah, so essentially from now on, if now a new Jinx version becomes available, including new TEI Publisher profiles, yeah, you would just install that and then load the config for your app and click on apply, and then hopefully all the updates should run automatically. Yeah, so it might just be that you then have conflicts, but hopefully, yeah, if you did everything like we tried to describe today, that should be rather limited effort.
So I can halfway answer because between when we started working on Jinx and between the release version, we sort of had this kind of situation that the Jinx core changed under our feed with so to kind of keep up the applications we like started with an earlier version. We had this merge to do, and it's like Wolfgang said, if you kept the things you kept separated, you don't need to really worry about. And then when you do have conflict, it's always a question, what do I want to merge in? Yeah, that's coming from the upstream version, because obviously very often you want to bring these things in. Yeah, we have the next release, which will be bug fix release, but also will include some new features. Yeah, so obviously you want to bring this in. I see a question from Edward about the IIIF configuration. Yeah, that you have some customization possibilities with the regex, and I was in exactly the same spot as Edward. I needed something more complex, and I would say that changing the IIIF config is, in this case, a way to go. Because like similarly like facets config, the IIIF config is kind of meant to be customized, but we can also I think it would be because you had it, I had it. This means at least two people had it. So maybe there is a room for better. Yeah, better customization interface via the config to allow for more without writing code. And
so IIIF config is already templated, so it does inject some parameters, but obviously they are not optimal. Yeah? So this. Yeah, so if you then have suggestions how to make it more generic, that would be very cool to change.
Yeah, so I have some big overreaching proposal because I think there is a lot of overlap. We had this discussion before between the navigation, IIIF, and how to marry it with the ODD customization possibilities. Yeah, but I would like to keep that discussion open. I have seen briefly a question earlier from Simon. Was it a mistake or?
No, but I've already answered. Thank you.
Okay. So is there maybe someone their hands up?
No, that would be up there. So yeah, if there are no other questions, we will add the presentation to the e-Editiones announcement of this talk, so you can see the presentation. It's also in we have this workshop repository on eEditiones GitHub, and usually we put all the slides there into the slides folder. So yeah, okay, not all, but a lot of them. I at least put most of my slides in there. So there you can access it.
Yeah, we can also link it from the
we will link it.
Announcement. And I think we would welcome like requests for if you would like an extended discussion of some of these topics or other topics, please come forward via Slack or write us. And
yeah, so I think we're perfectly on time.
perfectly on time. So I have like we will be live in Poland, so we will have a workshop in Poland in May before the European Society for Textual Scholarship conference, and Wolfgang will be in Berlin for something also in May.
BiblioConf workshop.
Yeah, for BiblioConf. Yeah, so if you are in the neighborhood, please reach out.
Okay, then wish you a nice day and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.